Sometimes when I start a stream, before I start the stream, I will listen to the song that I'm gonna use to start off the stream, like over and over again. This is just a 30-minute extended version of Spaceball, and it has infested my brain and made me go, I am now officially insane in the membrane. Even hearing it loop like 3 times here or so has already brought out a little bit of the crazy. Bop, 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 bop. Just get rid of that. And I'm gonna snort. Your boy has cleared his sinuses. Okay. So didn't keep you waiting that time, huh? I'm just gonna do another one of these review streams, cause I want to get through this list. I want it to be done. So we're getting kind of near the end. I should look. We're at 421. Technically 420 Lamau, because Megamix just got added onto there. Or I guess that's still... No, yeah, that's 420, yeah. Because I haven't yet reviewed Megamix. Out of 583, Jesus Christ. But we are getting there. All I need to do is just continue to do these streams. We've got... I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're gonna be going through a lot of kind of nothing games. Some something games. We got some cool stuff. We got Rocket Knight, we got Echo, we got Downwell. We got some stuff. But a lot of these games are just sort of like random, and then we get to the part where I've got all the different series. And that should be fun. Like, I'm sure there'll be an entire stream dedicated to reviewing all the PopCap games, for instance. Fucking Peggle. I saw World of Warcraft and I was like, what? Oh, right. So, I'm gonna turn on the webcam. We're doing webcam again for this. Oh wait, it's already on. Can't wait till the video, the like main channel edit of all these. Yeah, not gonna happen. So, if anybody has not joined us for previous review streams, I'm not going to play music. I'm going to probably listen to ASMR in my own headphones without letting you listen to it, because, I don't know, wouldn't it be kind of rude to play, I guess I've done it before, but play someone else's hard-made content on your stream? Who would do that? For instance, starting off every stream with a song that you didn't make, that would be ridiculous. But yeah, no, I never intend to, these never really, I think maybe 1 or 2 clips from this have ended up in Twitch scraps, maybe, but I really just do this for my own enjoyment, and, because I like talking about games, and especially I like talking about games when I have, like, tangible, what I would consider, like, evidence to refer back to, in the form of the VODs and streams and shit. So, yeah, we're just gonna plow through these. We got some poopy Genesis games, but first I should do Megamix. And basically put this on in the background. This is supposed to be sort of a podcasty type thing. I'm not gonna be doing anything exciting with the webcam. I just figure it's here for the few people who are just watching this actively, because I figure some people do that, because people chat and stuff. Okay. But I like to not have background noise, so you guys can put on music of your own if you want, or just have it going when you're doing something. I don't even know. So Rhythm Heaven Megamix, I recently finished playing like all the mini games in. And it's a mega mixed bag from me, because it's basically, there's a lot of issues here. It's not nearly as, like, I think, yeah, all 3, Rhythm Heaven Silver, Rhythm Heaven DS, and Rhythm Heaven Fever, all got 9.5s. They are all beautifully made and beautiful in their simplicity. Sort of like they're elegant in their simplicity, where it's just a big bunch of mini games. Like they kind of nailed the format in the first game. You just unlock mini games, you unlock a little bit of side content over time, but really it's just about the mini games and the remixes. Whereas Megamix kind of started shifting the focus a tiny bit. The game insists that it's a light story, but there is a story element to Megamix that I feel, and I think a lot of people probably agree with me on this, shouldn't have been in the game. Like, they just shouldn't have put in all this weird, like, plot nonsense. Because there's, like, some cutesy dialogue here and there, but mostly it's just fucking around, and it just feels pointless. Like, why do we give a shit about Tibby helping all these random people, these kooky characters with their problems that are pretty, like, children's show cartoonish, you know? So the story, I think, kind of brings this game down. The fact that there are not really there's not a ton of original content in this game. There's the new remixes, which are not the series' best, and there's not really that much fewer than there are in other games, but compared to the amount of just, like, normal mini-games, you would expect with the number of mini-games that Megamix has for it to have more remixes, but it has, like, I think 10 total or something like that. Sorry, that look was me doing a snort with the mic muted. There's only, like, basically a hefty couple of handfuls of original games in Megamix. All the rest of them are remakes or ports of ones from previous games, and it is cool to see some brought back from the GBA game that people in the West never got to experience, people who didn't play Silver, which is a fan translation. That's cool, but it ends up, like, especially if you've played the other three games, a lot of it ends up just being like, okay, I've already played this before. And this game also added, there's a lot to talk about with Megamix, because they also added the prequel games, where a lot of mini-games have, like, an easier, shorter first version before they actually get to the version that appeared in previous games. And those prequels just feel unnecessary. It kind of feels like they wanted to ease people into it a little more or something like that, but it ends up just being, like, the main audience for this game is, like, fans of the previous games, and all those people are going to be like, I don't care about this Tibby shit, I don't care about these prequels, just give me the new content and the mini games and the remixes and shit. And it starts out so slow, and it takes so long to get to the good shit, and there is good shit. Basically all the new mini games are great. Some of them are slightly mediocre. Like, I wasn't a big fan of, like, I don't even remember what it's called, Tangotronic and, like, Animal Acrobat and shit. Like, those were slightly mid, but the rest of them, I mean, they're all good. They're all a baseline level of good, and some of them are even great. Instant classics. But the amount of, like, fresh new stuff in this game compared to, like, all the old kind of, like, and sometimes, you know, boring and repetitive stuff. There's the little Peggle side quest where you're feeding the goat that was kind of funny, but after playing it a tiny bit, it was just kind of boring, and it was like, you have to feed that fucking goat so much to get all the unlocks, and the unlocks don't really have anything. Like, they're just, like, loading screen icons, I'm pretty sure. The fact that certain mini-games from previous games are locked behind getting perfects was also strange to me. It's like, just put all the content in the game just to be playable. I don't know. Like, Fever had locked behind all the perfects, Endless Remix. That, at least, like, you know, that's a more reasonable thing, where you get, like, one pretty cool extra mini-game, rather than being like, oh yeah, we've got, like, a handful of, like, 15 mini-games here. You have to unlock them piecemeal. And the pricing of the mini-games, like the Dazzles being, like, 13 flow balls or some shit like that. No. like I said, I even maybe would have preferred if they had like, because a lot of the ones that they brought back in the like museum mode that you have to buy with flow balls were like Packing Pests and Samurai Slice and a bunch of ones that have sequels in Fever, Karate Man, and just put the sequels in. Surely it can't be that much harder to put the sequels in as well, and then have them all cost a little bit less, so that you can I don't know. I don't know, that like the way that whole system was felt weird to me. And like there's this whole thing with like unlocking like rhythm items, that there's like an item that corresponds to each game and that's how you get the lore. That's like fine. There was just, it felt like they like complicated this game, what normally was a very simple system in all the other ones. They complicated it too much and unnecessarily, and the stuff that they added just didn't feel necessary. And I guess, like, I can't speak about this game as like a newcomer, of course. I can only speak as now a veteran of the series, but maybe to newcomers it's better. But from my perspective, it just seems like it was just peppered with a bunch of random bullshit that didn't really add anything. All that being said, yes, I would recommend the game. It's a Rhythm Heaven game. Therefore, it's good. And it's very cool to see, you know, the ones in that are ported over from Wii are just directly ported over, but the ones that they brought in from DS and Tengoku are, I should just say the GBA game, because Tengoku means heaven, right? Like, whatever. The ones that they brought back from, like, the more retro-ish consoles, they had to redo them. They had to, like, redo the DS games in widescreen, stuff like that. And that's kind of interesting to see how they did some of those, and how they botched the dazzles and stuff like that. Some of them, there's some interesting changes. Lockstep is a little more intensive and is a bit less lenient and stuff like that, because I think the reason they did that is because it was lenient on the DS. Like Frog Hop and Lockstep had that whole like barely input thing where they would allow barely inputs to count as a hit. They had that because the DS was like a little less precise, like tapping on the screen. But I think they kind of overdid it. Like I think that was a bit of a step too far. That being said, I was playing this game with input lag, so maybe that's just what I should really blame it on. But whatever. That's a minor thing. Lots of interesting stuff for a Rhythm Heaven fan, but you got to get through a lot of bullshit. Just sort of boring stuff. The prequels, the story. Challenge Train. A lot of the Challenge Train just feels like filling time, and then some of the challenges are insanely hard. I'm fine with there being difficult stuff. It's called the fucking Challenge Train. Like, that they're allowed. And they got some cute stuff at the end for beating all the Challenge Train stuff that's like... That's kind of like the Endless Remix reward, where like the WarioWare themed minigames are just cool enough of a reward to feel like a reward, but not so cool that it feels like bullshit that they're locked behind the entire Challenge Train, which can feel at times crushingly difficult and at times just boring when you're just playing through a bunch of minigames again. For seemingly no reason. Like, so a lot of them are just like, oh, they're thematically tied together. Here's a bunch of space minigames. Here's a bunch of sports minigames. Here's a bunch of monkey minigames, which is cute, but it just is tedious, considering how much there is in the Challenge Train. And then the whole system where you have to like spend coins, you have to like spend currency to try to do some of the things at like the challenge gates and at the Challenge Train. Just make another Rhythm Heaven game. But as I've noted with previous entries in the series, and especially this one, it seems like there's maybe not enough like original ideas to make a new Rhythm Heaven game, and I'd love to be proved wrong on this. I would love to see another Rhythm Heaven game on the Switch or whatever, but it seems as though there's only so many ideas they can have for rhythm games. Like Tengoku, the GBA game and like the DS game and stuff, they were bursting with new ideas. Then by Fever, like Fever's a great game. That's like my favorite in the series probably. But it kind of felt like, okay, they're relaxing into like a few set sort of standards and sort of archetypes of rhythm games. Like there's keep the beat games, there's call and response games, and there's really only so much you can do to put different like window dressing on those different concepts for mini games. And that's fine. I think it is a perfectly healthy philosophy to have about series that a series can just end. Like we can just have like Megamix. I noted that it feels pretty conclusive. Like not only the fact that it's like, oh, we're bringing back all the other games. Something about it felt very like last entry in the series-y. And like that's fine. And yeah, it's slightly unsatisfying that Megamix would be the last one to come out, but that's how it feels. Again, I'd love to be wrong on this, but it feels like the series has sort of been running out of steam somewhat, especially with Megamix. Fever, it just felt like, as cool as all the minigames are, a lot of them, you can be like, oh, this one's basically functionally identical to previous ones in the series, or functionally identical with tiny little changes. Tangotronic, for instance, this is just off the top of my head, Tangotronic is a lot like Ringside. Ringotronic, Robot Ringo, and like Munchie Monk and Micro Row 2 have been it has been well documented that they have the exact same cues. They don't have the exact same, like the cues aren't written out the exact same way. They've got totally different window dressing, but playing those two mini games is basically identical in terms of the mechanics. So I don't know. Yeah, as it's been pointed out, just porting the fucking games would be cool. What if they ported the DS one to like 3DS? That would be nice. Fever was on like the Wii U shop, I think, but otherwise, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling on. That's basically my thoughts on the game. It is good, but it's got so much shit holding it back, and especially the fact that a lot of its reused content, I think, gives it like an 8.5. Like it really, it's missing some of what it's not missing anything. It's got too much added bullshit, that sort of holds it back from being as good as the other entries in the series. So I'm gonna give it an 8.5, which an 8.5 is like perfectly respectable, great game, in my opinion, but not anything that like blows the mind and leaves you changed forever, whereas a 9.5 is like, damn, like that's an incredible experience that sticks with you for a while, and all three of the previous games do that, and Megamix just falls a little bit short, but it is good. It's a good game. Okay, now get that bullshit out of here. We're gonna get to the real meat and potatoes of this stream, which is Ren and Stimpy, Stimpy's invention for the Sega Genesis. This game, I played there was just a period of time where I played a bunch of Genesis games. I did not sort these together on the list. I actually just played all these in a row. Maybe not Rocket Knight Adventures and Ecco the Dolphin. Maybe I added those. But there was a period of time where I had the Genesis out, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just play basically all the Genesis games that I have, because I just have a bunch of random-ass ones. A lot of these, like all these early ones, I think all of them except Ecco the Dolphin are ones that I got when I got my Genesis, which I think I got it, I got it from like a friend of a friend who was like in the military, and he was like, oh yeah, you can just have my old Genesis, because when I was getting into retro stuff, I kept going around to people and being like, oh, do you have any like old retro consoles you don't want and have never used or were thinking about like getting rid of? And I got a lot of stuff that way. I got my N64 that way, I got a Genesis that way, and a bunch of games. I got a bunch of NES games that way. It was fun. That was a great period of time, and I was going around to garage sales a lot. out of all the ones that I played, out of this like chunk, Echo and Rocket Knight are sort of in their own category, but out of all these other ones, Ren and Stimpy was, I think, the best one that I played. Did you play those on stream? Yeah, all of these are ones that I streamed. Ren and Stimpy's Invention was actually pretty good. As Genesis platformers go, it was very creative. It had fun level ideas. Nothing to write home about, but it sort of captured the spirit of the show somehow in a video game, which is very hard to do, especially with like limited sprite space. This game is cool in the sense that you kind of control two characters at once, like kind of like the Ice Climbers, and you can switch. It kind of like Donkey Kong Country, I guess. And you can switch who's in the front, and depending on who's in the front, they have this totally different move set. I think some of my memory on these games is going to be a little bit fuzzy, but I remember there being a shocking amount of different moves that you can do in this game. And it makes platforming very fun, and you feel sort of creative in the way that you get around some of the challenges. It was not particularly challenging. I think I beat the entire game without like having to use the Game Genie or anything, which for Rocket Knight I had to use the Game Genie. So it's not too hard. It is kind of just a generic, like a lot of times with properties, like especially cartoons of this time, as we'll see later on, the go-to was just, make a platformer, whatever. But this one was particularly creative. It had a fucked up, like nerve-ending eyeball flesh level at the end that was, that sort of dipped into the fucked up undertones of Ren and Stimpy. The characters look cute / gross in their traditional Ren and Stimpy way. It was acceptable. I'm very on the fence. None of the rest of these except Rocket Knight are going to get a recommendation. This one, I mean, recommend implies like, yeah, seek it out and play it. Which, to be brutally honest, no. But it was cool. It was fine. I would give this like a 6. I guess. It was inoffensive. Quackshot starring Donald Duck, and it's kind of hard to tell, but in a lot of these streams, it just felt like the games were just getting worse and worse and worse over time. And it was hard to tell if I was just getting annoyed at Genesis games, like if I was just like my patience was running thin, or if I just started with the best one and then ran out of good ones. Because by the time I got to Judge Dredd, I was like Judge Dredd was poop. Like that was just a terrible fucking game. Like I remember I did these in 2 streams. It was Ren and Stimpy, Quackshot, and Jurassic Park, and then all these comic games. And by the end of each one of those streams, I was just like, oh, this is just a dreadful fucking game. Dreadful. But we'll get there when we get there. Jurassic Park, this was a very bad... Quackshot. This was a medium... It was worse than Ren and Stimpy, but it had cool pixel art, and it had kind of good music, I guess. There's one theme in particular, like the hub theme, that was very fun. There's a weird thing of like Donald Duck adopting different personas in video games to do, I'm just gonna write no for like all of these while I'm talking. To do various different things. This is sort of an Indiana Jones-esque take on Donald Duck. And he like shoots a gun that shoots plungers out of it. It's very goofy, and it might even contain Goofy, I'm not sure. I remember it being basically inoffensive, but it doesn't really have the creative stuff of Ren and Stimpy. It was just like your box standard cartoon platformer game based on a non-video game franchise. And it was, I stopped playing it because I was bored. I remember it had one kind of cool part with like a ghost that you fight, and the ghost splits up into a bunch of little ghosts, and you have to fight the little ghosts, or something like that. And there was a little bit of confusion. A lot of these old games, it can be a little unintuitive where to go or what to do, and I remember there being confusion about like how to progress in the game. It's hard to say if you can attribute that to my own dumbassery or if the game was actually confusing. But overall, I mean, I found almost nothing to really like. The music was okay, and the graphics looked decent. But I don't know, I'll give this like a 3.5. Jurassic Park, this one was really bad. The graphics looked really awful and like muddy. They tried to go for like a realistic style. The best part about this game is that when you start it up, a dinosaur says the word Sega to you. It goes like, Sega! And that's awesome. There's also a little bit of creativity in the sense that they let you control either a person or a dinosaur in this game. Like it's kind of like Left 4 Dead, where you can control the good guys or the bad guys, which is kind of neat. The platforming just feels like shit. It's hard to tell where to go in any of the levels. The camera's like too zoomed in camera, we say, but you know what I mean. Imaginary 2D platformer camera is too zoomed in, so sometimes you have to like make leaps of faith. Overall, very bad. The controls just felt very unresponsive. This game is broken to all hell. The speedrun for it was very interesting. I like looked that up later. Apparently, when you get on a ladder, you can just like move from left to right and like glitch out the game somehow. I don't know if it's that simple, but it's a mess. It's not a very fun game. The idea of being able to control a dinosaur or a person is fine, but it wasn't executed well. Like, I don't know, this one was really bad. 1.5. EX Mutants. So, this is the, I don't even remember. I should have looked this up before the stream, but it's not X-Men. EX Mutants was like an X-Men ripoff of some sort that was clearly trying to ape the X-Men. It was either a spin-off of the X-Men or it was just a fucking like bullshit copy pasta. But it had its own comic series. And it was called EX Mutants, or it might just be X Mutants. I think it's EX, though. Even though the X in EX isn't capitalized. Ugh. This game was very bad. It was ugly. Some Genesis games look pretty good, like Ren and Stimpy, Quackshot, Clone Wars, X-Men 2 Clone Wars actually looked pretty good visually. But some of them just look like poop, where it's like, this wasn't even on... Was this even on the Genesis? Like, the Genesis, a lot of Genesis games have going for them is that they look half decent, at least. But this one just looks like crap. It kind of looks like an NES game, and it's yet another platformer. I struggle to even really remember anything about it. I remember it being pretty brutally difficult and having bullshit, like, vague progression. There was a part where I had to, like, hit an unmarked wall and like blow it up in order to progress. The levels were very maze-like. The movement and attacks felt very unresponsive. Generally, just not a fun experience. A lot of these are going to get 1s and 2s, frankly. Like, a lot of people were like, a 6 for Ren and Stimpy, how brutal. But like, these ones are like nothing. I don't know, 1.5. Another 1.5. X-Men 2 Clone Wars. This one was a little better. This one looked okay. It had cool animation. I remember the controls felt pretty decent. Kind of reminded me of Strider, arcade Strider, except better controls, because I kind of didn't like the controls in original Strider. So... It was sort of your basic fare. I think you play as a bunch of different X-Men heroes. I didn't get very far. I think there was a part where there was like a timed mission that I couldn't get through, and I was like, I don't care. I'm not going to do this. But for what it's worth, it had decent pixel art. I think the music was okay. Some of these, like EX Mutants and Jurassic Park, the music, you just like don't even remember it from how bad it was. But this one's presentation was a notch above EX Mutants, and spoiler alert, Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge was also doo-doo. This one might get a 1. Is the Genesis just bad? Lots of Genesis games are bad. I've often said that like the NES was like kind of before they invented fun and before like real video games existed, and there's like a small handful of NES games. I don't know, I'm talking about the NES, not the Genesis, but this is just an example. The NES has like a handful of playable fun games. It's like the Mario games, Dr. Mario, the Zeldas, Punch-Out, Contra, Mega Man, maybe a couple others. But like the vast majority of just like random games on it are just terrible, like unfucking playable. Even Metroid 1 is a little rough, frankly. More than a little rough. That was before the series really found its footing, but I guess I will accept putting that in there. But the Genesis, of course, came after the NES and is more associated with like the SNES era, but those consoles have like the same issue. They have a slightly higher amount of like a higher percentage of games that are like acceptable, playable, decent, but still with the Genesis and even with the SNES, so much of just random games are just going to be terrible, or are just going to be so unmemorable and unspecial that they just fade from your mind the second you stop playing them. That's something like Quackshot, and then there's this stuff that's just going to be outright bad, like Jurassic Park and EX Mutants. And then X-Men 2, this one was okay. It was like acceptable, but I didn't care enough to keep playing, and it got frustrating at a certain point with like that timed mission. So 4, I guess. Let's give it a 4. Let's give it a charitable 4. Okay, Spider-Man and the X-Men in Arcade's Revenge. I think I am going to give this one a 1. It was so miserable, and every part of this game felt bad. It starts off with playing as Spider-Man, and like the web physics are fucking terrible. And I know it's a Genesis game, but like grapple mechanics have existed in games from this era that did not suck ass. And the graphics look fucking terrible. It kind of looks like EX Mutants, where it just looks like shit. It just looks like it's from an earlier console than the Genesis. Like when you think Genesis, you think games that look half decent, like Sonic, Rocket Knight, Vector Man, and shit like that. Like it's gonna have some kind of like visual style to it. But no, some of them just look like crap. And Atari 2600 Spider-Man had better swinging. I haven't played that one. I can't attest to that, but maybe. I'd believe it. It was very bad. All the levels were frustrating. All the levels had some sort of confusing aspect to them that I like couldn't figure out. The very first level was like you have to collect a bunch of different collectibles, but you have to collect them in a specific order, but that specific order doesn't really link up with how the stage is laid out, so you just had to end up retraversing the level like a million times. Very bad game. Very, very not fun. I think Arcade was like the name of the villain or something. I didn't get very far in this one. It was just trash. Judge Dredd, this one in particular, it's hard to tell if I was just like upset from having just played Arcade's Revenge. But this one was also very frustrating. It had some kind of issue, if I recall correctly, with like shooting while crouching, which you had to do for quite a few enemies. You had to like duck under their bullets. There was some clunkiness where like you had to crouch and then let go of the crouch button in order to actually start shooting or something like that. The graphics looked really muddy. I don't even remember how the music was, but it was probably bad. And it just had nothing going for it. There was nothing that interested me in this game. It had no charm whatsoever, and it was not fun to play. I don't know. I remember it had some kind of cool graphics sometimes, if memory serves. There was like a cool little opening cutscene thing that looked kind of neat, and I remember like the backgrounds looked kind of nice, but otherwise, and that is throwing this game like crumbs. I'll give it a 1.5 for having some half-decent looking graphics. And that's sort of also the benefit of the doubt. Like, I might have just been pissed off while playing it, but I seem to remember it just being fucking miserable. Okay, now that we've blown through those, I don't think those deserve much of my time, frankly, reviewing those, because those were bad. A lot of them were bad. Okay, now, getting to the real shit, Rocket Knight Adventures. This is a genuinely great game. Genuinely really fun. I would preface this by saying, if you can, play the Japanese version of this game, because it is distinctly easier and less bullshit than the American version. There is a phenomenon where, like, a lot of the time we think of, like, you know, Mario 2. The Japanese version is, like, way harder because they didn't think Westerners could handle it. But, somebody said I look like Michelangelo's David. I don't really see that. Is it the penis? It might be the penis. Rocket Knight Adventures has this issue that is endemic in a lot of games that got ported over from Japan, where I think the story that we heard, the story that I've heard, is in order for rental stores to make more money, they made games more difficult in the West, so that you had to keep renting them over and over again to actually beat the game. So capitalist bullshit yet again intervenes in having good, honest fun with a fucking video game, even in the goddamn 90s. But this is a great game. Awesome music, very cute, well-constructed graphics. Everything has a ton of personality and looks great. The soundtrack really is exemplary for a Genesis game. It has that very rare distinction of retro game soundtrack where I would actually listen to the music without playing the game. Like, I would just download the music on its own. So, yeah, all the presentation is great. The controls feel amazing. It has a fun little, like, dash mechanic to it. The main character is very cute and cool looking. I really can't say enough good things about this game, and especially considering after all of the bullshit that we've seen on the Genesis, this is on the fucking Genesis, which I think this game is more fun than Sonic, and that's maybe a spicy take. I like the classic Sonics enough. They are fun in their own way, but Rocket Knight Adventures is just more cool and satisfying. It has a lot of variety to it. Like, a lot of the bosses are very creative. There's a fucking mech fight in it that's super awesome. And yes, when I played this, I used the Game Genie, by the way, to give myself infinite lives and continues. You might ask, why give yourself infinite lives and continues? That's just what the cheat code said. Surely infinite lives would have worked, or infinite continues would have worked, but whatever. It gave me both. So, yes, you can probably tell I'm going to recommend this game. It's pretty long for a Genesis game, too. Like, I don't know why they wanted this game to last longer, because it was already pretty goddamn long. The ending sequence, in particular, drags on for almost a bit too long, frankly. There's just boss after boss after boss. But they're all pretty cool, to the point where I don't really care that it goes on for so long. There's really neat flying sections in the game. Those parts are really satisfying to do as well, where it kind of turns into like a space shooter. It was really, really, really fun, and it brought great joy to my heart, this game. And I remember before I streamed it, I had played it, I had attempted to play it a bunch of times and never got very far, because not only is it much harder in the Western version, but I didn't realize that I was playing on like it was like normal or hard mode, where there was an easy mode that like doubles the amount of continues you get to have. So not that would have helped that much, but I never really saw much of this game because of that issue. So play the Japanese version. Japanese version also has a level select. You can it's like a debug mode thing where you go into like sound test, you know, Petscop bullshit. Play the Japanese version. That is my addendum to this. But it really doesn't matter that much. I don't know. Can you emulate Game Genie? I used a real ass Game Genie for this, so I don't even know. I think you can. So yeah, what would I give this one? Like an 8? I don't know. Let's give it an 8. It's a solid fucking game. One of the best Genesis games. Good game. Solid. It still suffers from a couple of like retro game issues, like having lives and continues and shit. But great game. Great fucking game. I really can't recommend it enough if you're into like retro games, especially ones that maybe are a little less known. It has come to my understanding that Rocket Knight has other games, but they're not worth writing home about or not really worth playing. There was like an attempt at a reboot or something. Kind of sad that this series just sort of fizzled out because I feel like there was a lot of potential, but maybe they just took all that potential and just crammed it into one game, one really, really good game. I don't know. It's awesome though. Okay, Ecco the Dolphin. This game sucks. This was a very disappointing play for me because I had always heard Ecco the Dolphin. This is going to sound so stupid, but Ecco the Dolphin is sort of like an aesthetic icon for like vaporwave and stuff. It's like, yeah, Ecco is such an icon of like the Genesis era and of sort of retro aesthetics and stuff like that. But the game itself, terrible, like really unfun. The beginning of it is kind of neat. The way that you control the dolphin is kind of cool. It does have a neat vibe at the beginning, but most of the game is just like dismal cave mazes that are underwater where you have to do precision stuff with this kind of finicky dolphin movement system. And then, yes, infamously, this game ends with a battle against aliens, which... I don't know, like, someone said Ecco just exists to give children nightmares. And, like, what child got to the end of Ecco the Dolphin, though? Because it's such a long game, and so much of it is just so painful and boring and hard and clunky that I don't know why, I don't know who actually beat the game, who actually got to that, like, alien reveal. And then even that alien boss fight is really frustrating and difficult. But it has a cool vibe. At the very beginning, talking to the other dolphins with your sonar is cool. It has a couple neat things going for it, and some kind of cool music. Basically, the first 2 levels are like kind of fun, but yeah, painful, boring, and hard, just like my cock. It was just miserable, very disappointing, like I said, because I had always heard, oh, Ecco the Dolphin, and I've actually played another Ecco the Dolphin game, Defender of the Future, on the PS2, and that one was boring and bad too, which is just sad. Like, are there good Ecco games? I don't know. Defender of the Future was actually a little better though. Okay, what are we gonna give this one? Like a 3? I don't know. Do like a 2.5. Defender of the Future is also on the Dreamcast, yeah, but I played the PS2 version. Okay. Downwell. Oh, we're done with the Genesis games. Nice. Yeah, right, I wish Ecco was a good game. Same here, man. I wish it was. Okay, Downwell. This is a genuinely great game. This is sort of a bite-size roguelike, very fun, where you're falling down an endless, seemingly endless pit. It's not actually endless. And you shoot bullets out of your shoes. It has just enough, like, you know, some roguelikes, like Binding of Isaac, keep you coming back for thousands and thousands of hours. Downwell, it's like once I beat the final boss once, I was like, ah, yes, that was a super fun game. Now I am never going to play it again because I see no point in doing so, because I've seen all the different power-ups. I've seen basically every variation of how you can play this game in like the 4 hours that it took me to beat it. It's a great game, but it just doesn't have the same uh, longevity as your typical roguelike. But it is fun, very satisfying. It's got cool music, it's got cool visuals, very simplistic visuals, but it looks good. Doesn't need to be complicated to look good. It's got less visual variety than fucking EX Mutants, but it looks way better. So, whatever. It's got just enough variation on how you can play the game. You can unlock like different modes of like falling and different. Do you unlock like different items even? I don't know if you do. But you unlock like color palettes. That's another thing that's kind of fun about it. You can change the color palette. Overall, it's just a short, satisfying, fun little roguelike that you don't need to think about past the point where you beat the final boss. Would recommend. I'm struggling to think of anything else to say about it. There was like a special extension that was sold with this game when it came out on the Switch that like stands your Switch up sideways because it's like in a. I think Downwell must be on mobile. It would be perfectly suited to mobile. Maybe not though. I don't know. But it's got like this kind of screen shape. It's got that like sideways screen, and that peripheral for the Switch is like highly sought after for bullet hell shooter players, which I think is kind of funny. I don't know, give this one an 8. And again, I always think when I'm rating games, I'm like, saying is Downwell like just exactly on the same level as Rocket Knight Adventures? I don't know, they're such different games, even though they're both platformers. They're such different types of games that just don't think about it. Just try to think of them in a vacuum. I might even give Rocket Knight an 8.5. But then my brain is thinking, oh, so you think Rocket Knight Adventures is exactly as good as Megamix? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to give it an 8.5. You can't think about that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. X01 Prologue. This was a demo. So just keep that in mind. Ranking demos with a number is very difficult for me. These are like some of the hardest to call. I remember there was like the demo stream that I did before. I don't even remember where that was, but I think it was like the Undertale demo and shit like that. I may have passed it already. Whatever, I'm not going to control F for that. It's very difficult for me to rank those with a number, but X01 itself is a very cool game. With some issues. It's not like perfect, but it is very cool. And this is a successful demo because it sells you on the core concept of the game and tells you wherein the fun lies and gives you a couple of really satisfying. Where's the camera going? What is happening right now? I'm sinking? I'm sinking into the ground. No, I'm raising my desk. This was a joke. He's shrinking. My streamer is gone. So X01 Prologue. Let's just say, just play the full game. Yes, but with an asterisk. And this demo, I'll give it like a 7.5, because that's probably what I'm going to end up giving X01. He's going at Germa. Streamer dies to quicksand on stream. Man, when am I going to do a quicksand stream? So, yeah, just keep in mind that this is a demo. Just play the full game. The full game's good. It's nothing super insane. Like, it's nothing really worth writing home about. But it is good. It's a solid game. You Are the Road. We're getting into some more whack games. You Are the Road was a pretty basic game where it's just like an endlessly scrolling road and you turn the mouse to make the road generate in different directions, and there's these little robot cars that drive on the road, and you basically just fuck with these little AIs, and it says their emotions on the side of the screen, what each car is feeling. It's pretty basic. there's almost no gameplay to it. You can like spawn cubes in the road to like for things to hit. It feels like a tech demo. So I don't know if I would recommend it. Maybe if I were to make like a Whack Games collection, maybe I would put it in there. But it's not really something worth seeking out and playing at all. You basically, it's one of those many, a lot of the Whack games, you basically get the gist just by watching me play it. And I'm not trying to like advertise for my other streams. I just think that's true. You get the full experience by watching someone else play it, basically. But it's a cute little idea. It's whatever. Give it like a 2.5. I don't know. It was inoffensive, but there's almost nothing to it. Let's give it a 3. Give it a nice 3. Snowdrift. This is a Terry Kavanagh game. Very atypical to his popular works. Terry Kavanagh is the same guy who made V. He made Super Hexagon and Dicey Dungeons more recently. This is like an artsy horror game kind of thing that's very like low poly, lo-fi. It doesn't deliberately emulate or attempt to look like any sort of retro console, but it just is very low. It's your standard looking like crappy looking Unity game where everything's just really low poly. This is a semi-effective horror game. It's got some kind of neat ideas. Something that I maybe even just wouldn't really want to spoil if you want to go into playing it, but I don't know if I'd recommend it necessarily. The whole game does have a very like cold, dismal, sort of depressed, fucked up attitude to it that was pretty absorbing as horror experiences go. A lot of horror games really don't get to me because so many of them are just so similar and so like bound to conventions, whereas this one felt unsettling in a way that didn't, rely on tropes, basically. So that was cool. It's admirable for that. I'd give it maybe like a 4. There were some interesting concepts, like there's these like little like stepping stones that you have to follow. It's basically you're like in a house and you get sent out by this like entity that may or may not be your mom to like go get some firewood to burn, and there's like these stepping stones that you can walk on, but they disappear when you walk on them, and you realize that you have to leave them there. You have to follow the trail, but not step on them, so that you can have like a trail of breadcrumbs to follow back, so that you can make your way back home in the snowstorm. Kind of cool, but nothing super insane. And it's very short. I don't know. It delivers a certain amount of horror experience, which was fine. No Birdie No. This was another very, very brief experience where you're like a guy dangling off a cliff by your fingertips, and there's a little bird that's pecking at your individual fingers, and you like the way you control it is kind of cool. You put your fingers on ASDF and JKL : semicolon, and you hold all those buttons down, and you release a button in order to dodge the bird pecking at your fingers. Kind of neat. It was kind of easy to cheese it, though, at a certain point. It's just like get down to 2 fingers and just alternate them over and over again, because it can't peck the same finger twice in a row. It really didn't have a lot of depth. It's just kind of a cute little gimmick game, but it was fine. I don't know. Ranking these is so fucking difficult, and also giving a recommendation. It's hard to say, like, yeah, seek out this random fucking bird game that you're gonna play for like 2 seconds, because it has a kind of cute control scheme. But yeah, it's got flash game energy. And it's got voice acting and pixel art. I don't know what else to say. I don't know, 3. Give it a 3. Just give it a 3 and move on. Who cares? Second-person shooter Zato. This one was actually pretty interesting. I think several games have tried to do the second-person shooter gimmick in varying ways. This one, it's like your character stands in the center and enemies spawn around them. and the camera perspective from which you view the game is from the point of view of the enemies. So you have to kind of like, especially like the camera becomes split screen when there's multiple enemies on screen. I've died. I'm back. And that was kind of cool. It's a unique concept. It plays fine. The graphics are really rudimentary and not in a sort of stylized way. It just feels like an unfinished demo of a game, basically. This game went on for too long. I really think if they had compressed, because they keep coming up with like different ideas for enemies. Like there's zombie enemies that like you knock them down and then they lay on the ground and their camera just shows above them, so you can't really use them to scout out your own location. They should have made this game have like 1/5 the number of levels, because I remember it was fun, but it just kept dragging on, and it was like, just put all the cool ideas in like a few levels and have it be like a nice, short, exhilarating experience rather than being this big thing that drags on and on. The presentation is pretty bad. The music was pretty cool, if I remember correctly. There was only a little bit of music, but it was neat. But in all fairness, it was a neat, sort of unique concept. Maybe check this one out. It's not like the best thing ever or anything, but it was cool enough. One of the cooler whack games. I just wish the presentation was better, and I just wish it was shorter and more compressed. Give it like a 6. I don't know. It was creative and neat. Okay, Watashi wa Hijo ni yoku Nihongo hanasenai. This one was kind of disappointing. Had kind of a cool look to it, and I think the way the game works is you're like spreading seeds, and you can encourage things to grow, or you can kill things. And that's really it. And there's like 2 different types of trees, and you can see, it's nice seeing the trees like grow in front of you. And there's cool, peaceful music, and the game has sort of this neat, clean looking, everything's very lightly colored aesthetic. But there really wasn't much to it. There's like turtles that move around. Everything's very basic. There's very little interactivity, and really all you do is just grow a small forest of basically identical looking trees. Watching you play that game, I genuinely feel like I could play it for hours. Maybe, I don't know. It's relaxing, but it leaves you wanting. Like there really wasn't much to it at all. You can bounce on the turtles to no end. There's no point in doing that. So no, would not recommend. It was a little bit disappointing. It had some cool, the basic concept of like you have a grow and destroy button were kind of cool, but it's used for almost nothing. Like a 2. Let's give it a 2. Hate to be rude. It's a pretty game. Not that pretty, though. Okay, Townscaper. This was a very, like, you know what I was saying about how these last 2, about how they were lacking in presentation. Townscaper is very pretty and looks amazing. It's basically just like a little custom town building simulator. It looks very professional. Lots of like customization tools. It's got just enough restrictions and just enough options to like, you know, lead to some cool creative stuff. I've seen things online that people have created in this game that were very, very cool. However, this is not really my type of game. Games that just sit there and go, here's tools to create something, make something. I struggle to have fun with those types of games, personally. And this is my list. This is about how much fun I had with the game. So, I'm really on the fence about whether or not to recommend this one. I guess almost nobody's going to be looking through this list and looking at the recommendations and just playing them without hearing my review on them. So I guess just keep in mind that it's that type of game. If you're really into that, then play it. But I don't know if I would personally recommend it. But everything about it is really well made, and just the action of like putting down a building is very satisfying. It makes a little like sploosh in like the ocean, and they kind of like bloop, they kind of like pop into place in a way that's very satisfying. So cool game. I definitely admire a lot of like the work that was put into it. For me, I don't know, I'll give it like a 5. Because it was fun to mess around with for like 2 seconds, and then I was like, okay, as clean and cool as this is, I just don't really care that much. Does Salty Bet count as a game? Yeah, what did I give Salty Bet? Like an 8? A 9. I gave it a 9. It has issues, though. I count it as a game. It's a gambling game, basically. Your boy's gonna have to blow his nose here. You guys get the nose blow. Okay, nose blow cam is no more. All right. We're making good time here. We're doing, how long have I been going? About an hour? We'll do some more, and then I'll get out of your hair. Where did I start it at? Stimpy's Invention? Okay, we haven't really done that many. But I'm gonna try to get through all these fucking Pico games. These should be easy. And then after that, we don't really have much more until we finally get to the series. Like ideally, I would like to end at 100 Heads Among the Trees, or 1000 Heads Among the Trees, but I don't think we're going to get that far today. That's more than a page away. No, it's like almost exactly a page away. So X01, we talked about this one briefly. Now I'll actually talk about it. This is a cool indie game where you play as a little ball. It's a ball game, and it's got some very simple, unique movement mechanics where you can make your ball very, very, very heavy to make it like roll down things to like build up a fuck ton of momentum, and then you kind of get launched up in the air, and then you drift. You like glide in this like glider mode, and that's basically all there is to the game. It's very satisfying to play. Some parts of the game are just kind of boring. This is the Jupiter jump scare game. Some parts of it are just kind of boring, where you're just like traversing empty landscapes, but a lot of it is very fun and viscerally satisfying to play. Some of the levels were just a little like weird. I remember some of them being a little bit frustrating. Some of the level gimmicks are kind of cool. Like there's one where you can't move at all, and you just need to use the weight and the glide mode in order to move around. That was pretty cool and oddly satisfying. The game itself visually looks a little crappy sometimes. The fucking clouds look amazing. Like, shockingly cool looking clouds, but the environments themselves look kind of Unity gamey, for lack of a better term. They just, it could look better, but it's an indie game, so whatever. And, I had a few people telling me that I was a dumbass and that like I'm just a fucking fool for not getting the story of this game. But I found the story of this game a little bit difficult to parse exactly what was happening. Like there's some vague thing about like a mission that got sent to Jupiter that like went wrong. That's really honestly all that I picked up. That is all that I picked up from it. And I'm sorry if I'm just a dumbass. It just felt kind of vague. And like, what am I in this story? I'm like a probe that's sent to like investigate or something. I don't even remember. If I didn't understand it right after I played it, I certainly don't remember it now. But yes, I would recommend this game. It is very satisfying, very fun. The boring parts and the one or two slightly frustrating parts are small bumps in the road. It is overall an enjoyable experience. I will give it a 7.5 as well. It's neat. I kind of wish it had a little bit more to it, or that it just didn't have a story at all. Like that would be kind of neat. But overall, it's fine. It's a fine game. Okay, now we're getting into the Pico games. To anybody who doesn't know, Pico is a mascot for Newgrounds, and it is also a development kit it's like a programming language that is meant to sort of emulate the Commodore 64 or other retro consoles. I think the thing that I've always thought about Pico is that it's like meant for programmers to sort of challenge themselves at how efficiently they can program something in a system that has a lot of restrictions. So a lot of these games are very simplistic. Some of them are very bad. Most of them are not very enjoyable at all. Super Hot Pellet Muncher was a Pac-Man game. It was like a Pac-Man clone that also had like Super Hot mode. It wasn't very fun though. A lot of these I only played for like a few minutes because most of them are so simple and bare bones. Yeah, absurdly small file sizes. Yeah. It's like efficient programming. This one was okay. It's hard to fuck up Pac-Man, but there was really nothing to write home about. It's neat that they put in the Super Hot mechanic, and in fact, weirdly enough, there is Pico Hot, which I've already reviewed, which is a Pico version. Oh god, that wasn't even that long ago. Oh god. Oh, there's the demos, by the way. Jesus Christ, that wasn't even that long ago. That was like 3 streams ago. But it's just I do these streams so infrequently. Okay. So there's already a Pico, an official by the developers version of Super Hot that is in Pico, which is kind of funny. It was bad, by the way. This one, I don't know. It's almost nothing to it. It's interesting that they put in the Super Hot mechanic, and I think it had this slightly funny thing where if you die on, because there's like enemies on the menu screen, and if you intentionally die to the enemies on the menu screen, it says trollololol, which is very funny because that's a reference to trolling. So no, would not recommend. We're gonna go fast through these. Sorry if I don't give these the amount of time that they perhaps deserve. This is the only level in Pico 8. This one was pretty interesting. This is one of the better Pico ones that I played. It's just a direct port of This Is the Only Level, the Flash game, but just play the Flash game. It's just a worse version of that, and it is impressive how many of the different like level gimmicks they managed to work into this. Like genuinely really impressive. I don't know if it's as long as the original, but this is one of those like elephant games where you I forget what the like JMBDT2 or whatever. That might not even be the same person. Iconic, famous Flash game developer who used an elephant in a lot of their games, where you're playing the same level over and over again, but with different gimmicks. You can go to the Flash game review streams to find my review of the Flash game itself, which it is very cool. JMTBO2. But it's a cool game. Just play the Flash version. I would maybe give this like a 5, because it is neat and it just has all the stuff that made the original fun and funny and interesting. But it's in Pico, which makes it feel limited. Because it's just an objectively worse version of the game, honestly. And I remember some levels being like frustrating and weird for whatever reason, like the mechanics like didn't work properly or something. Again, my memory is quite hazy on this. Pico Fox, this one was bad. At least it was like 3D. It's like fake 3D. It tried to be like the original Star Fox. It had a really bad version of the iconic Star Fox theme. It was really grating and terrible to listen to. The game itself was very basic. And like, yeah, they put a small, simple 3D engine into the game. Like, that is neat in Pico, but overall, it just didn't really, it didn't deliver any sort of joy to my life. I would honestly give this one a 1 out of 10. Even the sprite art on the title screen was like not the best, frankly. Slime Bubble Bro was a Bubble Bobble clone, but viscerally unsatisfying. Something was just fucked up about like the jump mechanic in this game. And again, all these games get the excuse of it's in Pico, so you know who cares? It's it's less of a game and more of like a programming experiment. But it's just Bubble Bobble with changed aesthetics. Something about like popping the bubbles was just really difficult, and the enemies just were really fast and difficult to get around, if memory serves. I'm going off memory for this. Wasn't very fun. I don't know, 1.5. Better than Pico Fox. No, would not recommend. Alone in Pico. This was a Alone in the Dark, an attempt at a version of Alone in the Dark, the original Alone in the Dark in Pico. Also had a 3D engine. The 3D stuff was vaguely impressive. Alone in the Dark is not very fun on its own, and the Pico version was just more basic and restrictive and crusty. The main word here is crusty for this one. No. That's like a 1. That's like a solid 1 right there. No, would not recommend. Pico Racer. Oh, this one was like, this one was kind of like Outrun. This one was half decent. For a Pico game. It was like 3D racing game. Also nothing to write home about, but it was one of the more bearable Pico games. That 3D racer in Pico is really all that I can do to describe this game, frankly. Like that's literally it. Maybe like a 2.5. No, would not recommend. Plan B, this was a game by... I can never remember the guy's name, but the guy that made Getting Over It and Quap, and who named the rooms in VVVVVV. He's doing his classic bit. I like this guy. I feel like he's a fucking one-trick pony. Bennett Foddy, thank you. I can't help but think the guy just only has one idea for how to make a game, which is to make the worst fucking control scheme possible, and then have like a relatively simple goal. And like, man, that was so funny when he did it with Quap, and then already like with this and with Getting Over It, I'm already sick of it. And I'm just like, dude, get a new thing. Do a new thing, please. Because in this, you're playing as a bee, and you're trying to pollinate flowers, but your bee is like getting blown around by the wind and shit. And it just is annoying and frustrating and hard to play, and that's the joke, I guess. But it isn't very funny because I've already played Quap. So no, would not recommend. This gets a 1. It's just annoying and frustrating, and the graphics aren't very good because it's Pico. Just one boss. This one was actually pretty cool. This is probably the best Pico game on here because it's not trying to ape anything. It's not trying to be a silly joke. It's just a single cool boss fight where you operate on this little grid, and the boss fight has a bunch of different phases, and each phase like introduces a new mechanic to it. It gets a little bit finicky at some parts. Like some parts are kind of frustrating, but overall it's a creative game. It looks fine for Pico, and I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like, oh, this one was one of the better ones, and then I have almost nothing to say about it because it was effective in what it was trying to do. It is, in fact, just one boss, and it had a couple of neat mechanics. I think there's like a part where your character splits in two, and there's like a mirror version of you that's walking around at the same time that you have to like manage while dodging attacks and trying to attack yourself. It's pretty cool, but nothing exceptional. I'd give this one like a 3.5, I guess. Let's give it a 4. Let's give it a nice round 4. No, would not recommend because it's just as Pico games, it's good, but it's still a Pico game. Okay, then we got Poom. This is our last Pico game. This is a remake of Doom, and they kind of cheated. It's not actually like a total remake because I think there's only a few enemy types, and the levels don't actually follow the level structure of the original game to a T or anything. But it was just an attempt to recreate some kind of Doom in Pico. And Doom is an infamously simple game. There is there's a strange sort of cheating method that they used to be able to accomplish this. It's more of an achievement than an actual like game you're supposed to play. But it's a neat accomplishment that they were able to do this, but they kind of cheated by having each individual level be its own Pico file, basically. So that's why when you play the compiled version that's a bunch of different levels put together, there's like absurdly long load times in this Pico game, because it's basically loading up an entirely different file for you to play. That being said, it is essentially playable. It's neat that they were able to recreate Doom as accurately as they did, even though it's not perfectly accurate. Of course, you play it with tank controls. It's not the sort of thing that you would want to actually play, but it's neat that it exists. But it's also slightly, like, some of the magic is removed by realizing that in order to get it to look this good, they did have to split up each level into a different, like, game file. I don't know. So... Boom. Give it like a 3. And yeah, somebody's like, reviewing these kinds of games is weird. Yeah, like, that's why I'm kind of just breezing through them. Because mostly I just want to get to the other games on this list, and I feel just for completeness' sake, we might as well do these ones too. But I don't know, I think it's also kind of fun to try to, it's like kind of a fun like thought experiment almost, to try to review something that is so basic like this. And I might as well give my thoughts, because I did play them. I'm growing. Pregnancy test Doom actually turned out to be fake, I think. I think that was not real, if memory serves. Okay, let's get through a few more of these, and then I will get out of your hair, I think. And then next stream, I'll try to and actually we've got a couple more Pico games coming up here. But Cookie Clicker. Cookie Clicker this is another one that's hard to review. But Cookie Clicker is an interesting experience. What do we call these? Idle games? It's an idle game. And it's like, it started off as a joke, basically, like many idle games, like the entire fucking genre of idle games. But it is a satisfying experience. Need water. Might like tickle in my throat. It's certainly a cool experience. These kind of games are, like, the series, or the genre itself started off as an actual joke about how you can sort of, like, hack your brain to get addicted to seeing a number increment over time. But in the end, you know, they ended up kind of developing a compelling game around that, despite it being sort of just exploiting the addictive side of the human brain. And by the way, I did not play the Steam version. Apparently there is a Steam version of this game. But I played the web version on stream because that was the version that I always played when I was younger, when it came out. And it's like the Redux edition of it, not the original. With like the HD cookie. It's funny. It's like a comedy game. It has a neat vibe to it where you start off, it's just like, oh, you're baking some nice cookies with your grandma, blah, blah, blah. And then by the end, it's like you're unlocking the powers of like the eldritch demon grandmas to like bake 10 trillion cookies per second. And you've like overrun the world with factories of cookies, and you've mined all the resources on the planet to make cookies. And it's just kind of funny. It's a goofy game. I guess I would recommend it. How the fuck do you give a number rating to this? 10 out of 10? No. Yeah, the Steam version has music. Somebody said I don't think there's many differences between the web version and the Steam version. I think the Steam version, the main difference is that it has music made by the composer for Minecraft, whose name I forget. It's like C23X. They have some weird name. I don't know, give it like a 7. Somebody said 7 and that felt right. That felt right to me. Yes, C418. You bunch of fucking zoomers. Okay, Zapper One Wicked Cricket. This was a game that I played with Lark because he had nostalgia for it. I don't think I would recommend it, but this game's kind of interesting. It's got the same composer as De Blob, for one thing. It is, if memory serves, it's like the company that made it was going to make a Frogger game. It was going to be like a sequel to like PlayStation 1 Frogger or something like that. And then they lost the license to it. This is the presumed reason for this existing. Excuse me. But it's like a Frogger-style game, kind of. It's like a tile-based thing, which I guess Frogger isn't necessarily tile-based. But this interpretation, it's Frogger-esque gameplay, where you're like moving around avoiding things, trying to get to the goal. But it's much more structured. There's much more like actual levels to it. It's fine. It is an inoffensive sort of shovelware type game. It better than your typical shovelware. It's not bad. It's not like painful to play or anything. It's just average, like early 3D game where being 3D was kind of a gimmick. And I don't know. It has a scene at the end where the camera goes in somebody's mouth and comes out their asshole. That's kind of a cool feature. That was a cool part of the game, at least. But overall, not a recommend. It gets like a 6 from me. No, let's give it like a 5. It was basically not painful, but it did not do anything for me either. It was kind of funny. It was kind of funny, especially having Lark there talking about his memories of the game. Crayon Physics Deluxe. This game, I remembered being more fun than it actually was when I streamed it. It ended up just being really frustrating, equal parts frustrating and boring. It's a game where it's kind of like Scribblenauts in a sense, where you're trying to get a ball to a goal, and that's not really what you're doing in Scribblenauts, but it's not really that much like Scribblenauts. It's more like fucking Drawn to Life, which is by the same devs as Scribblenauts, I think. But it's like you're trying to get a ball to the goal, and you have to like draw objects with crayon, and the objects that you draw become real and have actual physics to them, and you have to use those to get the ball to the goal. And in games like this, it feels like finding creative, interesting solutions for things is usually like the satisfaction that you find in games, in this type of game. Like in like The Incredible Machine or whatever. What is that? The Incredible Contraption? Whatever that game series is. That one is cool and delivers on what this game is trying to do better than this game does. Because a lot of the time in this game, it just felt like you figure out one fantastic contraptions. You find one dominant strategy that works, and then you kind of just end up doing that over and over again, and then you find a level where that doesn't work, and then I just felt completely stumped. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And it ended up being, it was very frustrating, actually. Like, weirdly frustrating. So no, would not recommend. It also had kind of grating, annoying music. It was just like one song that just loops over and over again. That's sort of this like this like peaceful sounding music that just ended up irritating me to no end. I'd give this one like a 3. It was fun for a little bit, but it very quickly got very frustrating, and I just gave up. Okay, Eat Girl. This was a surprisingly good game, actually. I really liked this one. And there were a couple of parts that felt like brutally fucking difficult and frustrating, but overall, it was a very fun experience. This is a modern indie Pac-Man reimagining, basically. It's like level-based. It had a lot of interesting concepts. One of the most interesting things about it is that in the hub world has the... Hold on. Oh, I'm a dumbass. Okay, whatever. In the hub world for this game, you like solve puzzles and progress. I don't even know how to describe this, but there's things to do in the hub world in just the level select. Like there's like a twist that the level select is a hub world in and of itself, which was a very cool concept to me, and I thought they did that really well. Where you need like certain power-ups. You need to like bring a power-up from like way late in the hub world to way early to actually unlock like a secret level and stuff like that. Very cool. It's got cool music, it's got cool visuals, good sound design. It is viscerally fun to play. Some parts of it were quite frustrating. I remember being very upset at the last level. The last level just felt like a huge jump in difficulty, and just ended up being tedious. It's hard to say if I was just tired at that point from having played the entire rest of the game, but I struggled on that last level for so fucking long, and it was so difficult for me. And there were a couple other like frustrating parts along the way, but nothing got too obnoxious. It was a really solid game. It was really fun, and had enough of a unique identity of its own to be totally separate from Pac-Man. Like, I almost forget that it's a Pac-Man like, but it is indeed aping Pac-Man in some way, but it was very, very cool. Give it, like, I don't know, this one's right around the same quality as X01, which I shouldn't think like that, but like, yeah, 7.5. That feels good. Maybe an 8? No, I think 7.5 feels good. But it was cool. It was a cool indie game. I was shocked at how fun and interesting it was, and how many like neat ideas it had. Okay, we're just gonna get through these next 3, and then I think I'm gonna call it quits. Maybe I should do Desert Child as well, so we can start off next stream with Crazy Taxi. And then, yeah, we're like, yeah. Hopefully next stream I should just do like this whole segment, basically. And then we'll do Bullet Hells the next stream, and then we'll start doing the series. And we'll maybe actually get caught up on this list. That will be intensely satisfying. Okay, so these next 3 are also Pico games. This was when I did like Celeste versions, because Celeste was originally a Pico game, and people have made modded versions of the Celeste Pico game. One of which is Celeste Classic 2, which is made by the actual dev, Maddie Thorson. This was very fun. It was a totally new mechanic where you have this like grappling hook that just pulls you straight forward, and then you can sort of jump out of it. Very satisfying, very cool platforming puzzles, the kind of quality platforming that you would expect from a Celeste game. I would call this one more fun than original Pico Celeste. I don't know what ranking I gave that one, but hopefully that opinion lines up with the number I give this one. I'm not going to look back. I'm not going to look back at it because I don't want to try to compare. But it was cool. This game is kind of a loophole because I remember the creator of Celeste saying that there was never going to be a Celeste 2, but they didn't say that there wasn't going to be a Pico Celeste 2. So that's how they kind of got around that and ended up making sort of a sequel to Celeste, but it's not really like there's not really story or anything like that. I remember playing this with a controller, and the final screen of the game was really difficult with controller, and then I swapped over to keyboard and got it in like one try. So play this on keyboard. It's meant for keyboard. And I think you'll have a lot more fun, especially with that final screen on keyboard. There was just something fucked up about doing it on controller. Like, you're not supposed to... Like, I jerry-rigged it. I fucking, like, bound the keys using Joy-to-Key to an Xbox 360 controller, and I was like, okay, no. So... Celeste Classic 2, give this, like, a 7. I guess. That's probably the exact same score I gave Pico Celeste. Hold on. Did I even rank Pico Celeste on this? No, I didn't. Okay, well, whatever. Celeste Classic 2 gets a nice 7. It's a short game, basic graphics, but satisfying. And that's all I have to say about it. There's really not much more to it. Okay. Oh, Adelie. This was an attempt at like an open world type of Celeste, like Pico Celeste, where you're moving around this sort of interconnected world. It was not very good. I remember it being quite frustrating at times, and the platforming challenges were just kind of all over the place, requiring way more precision than is typically required in Celeste, because Celeste is sort of known for being a difficult platformer, but a lot of it is about finding the right approach to, finding the right way to approach a platforming problem rather than just getting the pixel perfect fucking dash or whatever. This one ended up being quite annoying and frustrating. Not much to recommend here at all. 2. The idea of making Celeste like that open world thing is kind of neat, but it just wasn't very fun. Then Celeste X, this one was kind of funny. It's just Celeste Pico, but it replaces the main character with Zero, or not Zero. It replaces it with Mega Man X. So you have Mega Man X wall jump and dash mechanics. It was kind of neat and cute. Some levels were quite frustrating. I don't know if... I think they adjusted some of the levels to make them possible to beat as Mega Man X. Hard to say. I don't think I would recommend it. It was just sort of a cute little... it was just a neat little thing without actually having much substance to it. So... Let's get this search out of here, by the way. Yeah, it wouldn't recommend, but it wasn't like offensive or anything. It just, I remember some parts of it being kind of annoying. It was just a neat little like proof of concept of like, oh yeah, you can put this different movement control system in basically the same exact game. And I think, wasn't there a part in the middle? Wasn't there a part in one of these where you have to, either Adelie or Celeste X, where you have to like fight? I think it is Celeste X, where at the halfway point you have to fight an AI-controlled Celeste, which was kind of neat and kind of incredibly difficult. I think I remember that being one of the more frustrating parts. This gets like a 4.5. Let's give it a 4. It was inoffensive, but for the most part, but it nothing worth playing actually. Okay, that's the last one for today. We're going to do Desert Child. This is an indie game that I would call underrated, but it also isn't that amazing. Game's got a great soundtrack. Really cool soundtrack. Really kind of neat vibe. It's like a pixel art type game. Where everything's very flat. There's a lot of like flat colors. It clearly is very inspired by Cowboy Bebop, to the point where sometimes it just feels like it's ripping off Cowboy Bebop, but whatever. This sort of like future space cyberpunk cowboy world. It was neat. The main gameplay loop is that you wander around this city buying like upgrades and talking to people and stuff, and then you do these races. And you race on like this... I don't even know what to call it, like a float bike thing. that like I'm struggling to think there must be a better term for this. But this like hoverboard motorcycle type thing, and it was basically fun to play. Some of the bonus levels, especially, were fun to play. The like vaporwave themed one where you're collecting money that's supposed to be like a hacking internet bank heist. That was cool. It almost felt broken how much money you can get from that one. But the game overall just felt like I think it was one of those games that was made entirely by one person, and I remember thinking at the end of this game that it could have benefited from having a few more people work on it. Because it just had some tone issues. It felt like the game kind of ran out of steam at the end, where you like have this big race with your like rival who's been kind of built up throughout the game, and then there's like almost no payoff. Like you just kind of win the race and then it's over. And I just felt like if just a few more hands had been on deck with this game, it could have been something really special. And maybe somebody to tell the creator, like, hey, this joke that you put in really wasn't that funny. Maybe you can cut that out. This kind of creates a conflicting tonal issue for the game. There were just certain things like that where I was just like, it's just kind of all over the place, tonally especially. But the gameplay itself was pretty fun. The races were cool. I found it to be just difficult enough to be compelling without being too... It didn't really get frustrating or anything. And there's a couple of neat mechanics. Like there's these fucking like magic beans that you can buy that give you random either upgrades or sometimes downsides when you race, which is kind of neat. But yeah, it's a game that I think had more potential than it actually achieved, and in the end, it was a little bit disappointing. But what should I give it? My Explorer bar just like reset. All my icons at the bottom of the screen just disappeared and then faded back in. That was scary. I give this like a 6.5. Oh, what? I'm not clicked into the window. 6.5, and like I'm super on the fence about recommending it or not. I don't think I necessarily would. Just download the soundtrack. Soundtrack's really good. That was like the coolest part of it, frankly. Which is nice. I do like an indie game with a nice strong soundtrack with like a bunch of different musicians. That was very cool. But overall, pretty mediocre game that felt like it didn't really live up to its full potential. Okay. That's all for today. How much did we get through? Holy shit. We got through more than an entire page by one game. That's pretty satisfying. And a lot of those were Pico games, but I'll fucking take it, man. And next time, we'll have plenty of time to go through these. We got some pretty significant ones in here. Vampire Survivors, Bastion, Katana Zero, Closure, Little Inferno, Goose Game. And then a few more whack games in there. So maybe that'll be, this, here's my prediction, is that this portion will encompass the next stream. Maybe this, maybe like this will be the next stream, potentially. We'll see. We'll see how easy or hard it is to review games in a series like this, because I feel like once you get the base down for like how good Metal Slug 1 is, then you can do all the rest of them compared to the first one, because they're all pretty similar, just with slight variations. So maybe those will be faster to go through. But we'll see. We'll see how the chips land. How are these organized? A lot of them are in like pseudo-chronological order, and then whenever there's a series, I would just put all those games lumped together. And a lot of the longer series I put at the end of the list. It's a fucking hodgepodge. Like, the organization is bad on this. Because, like, here we got a few series that are just in the middle for, like, no reason. Nintendo games are at the top for, like, no reason at all. I will readily admit that I did a terrible job organizing this list. But I don't think, beyond putting games in a series next to each other, I don't think there's much point in organizing it much. Like, I gotta get to them all eventually, so whatever. I also put like all the arcade games together, I think, yeah. Or most of them. We got some bullet hells down here that I didn't put there. Okay, so let's go raid somebody. Let me turn this off. Make my webcam nice and big. There we go. Who will we raid today? I always want to raid Salty Bet, but we can't. Let's go raid Gokai-kun, the, one of the Jokakaka guys, is doing Persona 5 Royal. Let's just go raid them. Vinny's playing Mario Kart 8, which is kind of neat. But, no, we're gonna go raid the guy with 1 viewer. So go show them some love. And hope you enjoyed. That was a productive session. We're finally nearing somewhere close to the end of this fucking list, and then I can relax a little bit. Take it easy, guys.